evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Don't touch this dial. Yes, you have just tuned in to the Grand Boulevard Coalition Show. I am your host, Bomani Obadelli. The Grand Boulevard Prevention Coalition is brought to you by CAN TV. This is a live, interactive call-in show, 312-738-1060, 312-738-1060. We have a very exciting guest for you today to hear a young man who's doing some phenomenal things in our community. But before we introduce our guest, let me just talk about a few of our partners, and then we'll dive right into the show. The Grand Boulevard, again, Coalition is a coalition of community partners that are focusing on underage drinking and drugging in the Grand Boulevard community. The Grand Boulevard community boundaries are from 51st Street on the south, north to 35th Street, west to the Dan Ryan, east to the lake. And coalition partners are consist of community-based organizations, faith and civic leaders. A couple of our organization partners are the Institute for Positive Living, Reverend Maurice Coverson, Greater Harvest Missionary Baptist Church. Pastor Eric Thomas is our faith partner, one of our faith partners, I should say. Krista Hamilton at Centers for New Horizon, John Cook of the Bronzeville Community Clubhouse. We also have Ms. Roxanne Jackson of the Green Light Movement, and we have Recovery 2000, Izetta Walton, who is the Executive Director. We also partner with the Haymarket House, who also have the coalition that focuses on underage drinking and drugging in the Grand Boulevard, Bronzeville community. We partner also with the Institute for Technology at IIT and several of the schools in our community. And our civic engagement leader, and I would be remiss because she's been so supportive of the work that we're doing, is the 3rd Ward Alderman Pat Dow, and State Senator Maddie Hunter are also a part of our coalition as civic engagement leaders. Again, this show is focusing on underage drinking and drugging, and we're coming to bring information about, for that matter, for the most part, underage drinking and drugging and prevention in the Grand Boulevard community. But as I told you as I came on, we have a very exciting guest today. I think he's interesting, a young brother who's doing some phenomenal things. Mr. Ken Lewis. Ken Lewis, who's a film producer. He started out as a photographer. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Hey, man, thanks for joining us.
Okay.
All right, we're going to delve right into it. Again, this is an interactive show, 312-738-1060, 312-738-1060. We're talking about the Grand Boulevard Coalition and the drug-free communities, and our guest today is a very dynamic young man, Mr. Ken Lewis. Ken, so let's get right into it, man. So
sure.
let's talk about some of the film projects that you've done in the past. One that I think that is really interesting that you've talked about. There was a silent film that you did focusing on a young lady who was battling some substance abuse and other dependency issues, chemical dependency issues, if you will.
That's correct.
Yes, sir. All right. Tell us about it.
All right, sure. So the movie is titled Gene. So Gene was shot in my hometown of Gary, Indiana, and basically what it's about is about a woman that's going through different struggles. But it's not, when you're in the inner city, a lot of times you're so afraid of things like heroin or cocaine, the hard drugs. But what often doesn't come out is the things that we can go buy every day. You know, cigarettes, prescription drugs, things like that. So I wanted to take basically the viewer and the audience down the lane of a young woman that really got caught up in those things. But it's not really just about the substances, it's really about the negative influences in her life as well. So it kind of starts off, she's happy, she gets introduced to one thing, and as you see, throughout the course of the actual film, her baggage gets bigger. She starts off with a purse, and then these are just metaphors for just different things coming into her life. Then it goes into a backpack, and then after that, she's got a full-blown pulley. So at the end, obviously she meets her demise. So that film, hopefully, that can get the message out of what these type of things can do to you. Yeah,
and as you know, I'm sure there's no secret that many people know that the country is now in this outrage over the opioid abuse and what opioids is doing to our communities, several communities, and whether it's Grand Boulevard or whether it's Gary. I gotta tell you, man, I've not spent much time in Gary,
it's a great place. It's a great place.
Yeah, well, yeah, when you're leaving. No, I'm sorry, man. I'm joking. All right. But let me say this to you, in all sincerity.
Sure.
There's a gentleman who's building a new hangover out there with the airport. Gary, your mayor Karen, the mayor there, Karen, I forget her last name, Freeman, is doing some stuff to bring the city back. I've always drive through there on my way to the event center. That's going way to Hammond to an event center. But I've never really spent any time in Gary. All you do is hear about the negative stories. Just like if you came into the inner city of Chicago, people will tell you about areas or places where not to go.
Sure.
So I was being it was tongue in cheek, but in all sincerity, I think that the work that you're doing and others. There was a young brother who I knew that was out there, Cyron Smith, who was doing some organizing and trying to develop block clubs, who took that model from Chicago and went out into Gary to try to deal with some of these social ills that was taking place in that community. I'm hoping that out of this, someone sees this, that because we are a DFC a grant, that maybe they will fund a coalition or develop a coalition in Gary to be able to look at some of the same systemic problems or some of the same issues of underage drinking and drugging in the Gary, Indiana area. But Ken, so I jumped right into your film. Tell the audience a little bit about Ken Lewis. Who is Ken Lewis?
I'm an artist. So when I say an artist, anything that has to do with the arts I'm pretty much interested in. So I kind of started off doing music. I was actually a saxophone player when I was growing up. That transitioned into music production. From music production, I started photography, and then from then I went to full-blown film. The whole point of all of that is I basically want to tell a story through art. So I want to tell a story that can help, the youth, that can help anyone that's going through problems, and just kind of tell it in a more innovative way. Just kind of the way that we did Gene. Gene was entirely premeditated that we would use music and we would not use dialogue, because a lot of times when you mix different art forms together, you get someone that's more into music, you get someone that's more into film, things like that. But you get people to the point that they can understand the message through whatever art that they basically are concentrated on. So,
okay,
so that's it.
Very well, and we got to go to the calls in one moment. I want to know, how old are you, man?
43.
43. Yes. All right. And you've been doing films for how long?
About films full blown for about 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
But for the photography game, about 5.
Okay. All right. All right. And I have another question, but I don't want to hold the callers.
Okay.
Caller, you on the air?
Yes, I'm here.
Caller, you on the air? Go ahead, caller. Make your point.
First of all, I want to thank you guys for doing this. My name is Jacob. I'm calling from Detroit. What I want to do is first of all, I want to thank Mr. Lewis for doing this film. I've seen it. I think it's a really good piece of work. 2, I want him to talk a little bit about, you guys mentioned, drug use and abuse in the inner city. So Kenneth sounds like Mr. Lewis grew up in that area. How did he avoid those things and get to where he is today? If he could talk about that, I think he's an example of growing up in that environment. You can come out of it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you for your call, caller. Thank you.
So absolutely. So it's funny because the inner city is basically the same wherever you go. I think a lot of it is the influences, that's surrounding you. So if you have a really good family, which I did, had a really good, relationship, with my mother, with my father, and they kind of kept me out of that. It's difficult to not fall into that trap when you're in the inner city, because there are so many negative influences around you. I always say education is my best friend. I never gangbanged, never shot a gun, I never did any of this kind of stuff, which people think that me being from Gary, that's basically what happens, and it's really not. Gary's a pretty good place. The only issue with Gary is I think we need to, with Chicago, let me compare the two. Chicago, I don't think it's any worse than Gary, but it's got the downtown, it's got the museum, it's got these type of things to camouflage the actual inner city. Gary doesn't have a lot of those things, so I think putting that into the community would help people that is going astray. But me, I just stayed off the wrong path, went to school, kept my nose clean, and that's basically what happened. Yeah,
and man, that's a great response. All right, you are watching the Grand Boulevard Coalition show. Grand Boulevard Coalition, you can reach us at 312-588-3868. 312-588-3868. Or you can email us at gbcchicago@gmail.com. Again, gbcchicago@gmail.com. This is the Grand Boulevard Coalition Show, brought to you by CAN TV. This is an interactive show, 312-738-1060. Again, 312-738-1060. You are watching the Grand Boulevard Coalition Show, and our guest today is a dynamic young man, Mr. Kenny Lewis. And I see we have several more callers, so we're going to go right to the callers. I had a question, but I'm going to come back to it. Okay. Caller, you on the air?
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you? Can you speak up a little bit?
Sure, I can. You know what? About the weed and all that stuff, do you think it's going to get worse, these young kids? Because they're going to get it just like they get liquor. They get all smoked up, go get in a car, and kill somebody or kill themselves. That's the thing I'm worried about. I don't care. If they can handle it, let them. But, you know, I drove the CTA bus. And you know what? They gave me surprise random testing. And you can't believe how many of the people, bus drivers, were caught dirty. So, you know, all these drugs and stuff. But I want to, the gentleman next to you, he's like me. No drugs, the right way. I graduated high school. I'm going to be 70 years old. So nothing more, has changed more than that. And these young kids, they want, you know, they think that they know everything, and they don't know a thing at all. So I just want to say thank you guys. What do you think about what I said?
Thank you for your call, caller. Thank you so much. Well, I would just say this. I hear you. You know, and I think in a roundabout way, you were talking about they were going to do it and they were going to get it anyway. I know that there's a push to legalize marijuana here in Illinois. I think as an alternative to taxing people, I could probably support that. My issue is it going to lead to an increase? And I'll be honest with you.
Right.
Is it going to lead to an increase of young people having accessibility to it? And that's my biggest concern with the legalization of any narcotic, period. Whether, you know, like alcohol is accessible and marijuana. My concern is young people and their accessibility levels, if you will. And so I heard you talk, Kenny, and I'll let you go.
Okay.
I heard you talk about parenting and growing up with the mother and father in the home. And how important do you think that is today? I hear a lot about having those type of values. How important do you think it is to really, truly have two-parent households today?
Yeah, it is paramount to success. I mean, it's absolutely important because what happens is you actually get people to care about you and they can help guide your life. When you don't have parents to guide your life, the streets, especially if you live in the inner city, the street will end up guiding your life. And you have to go whatever direction that the street takes you. Yeah. And not just that, just to get back to the gentleman's question, I do think that it will get worse. Yeah. I think any type of drug, and I'm not talking about just weed, I'm talking about anything that you can feel a high from. I'm talking about cigarettes, alcohol, popping pills, and you know, nowadays weed is so accepted everywhere that it's not looked at as a drug anymore. So a lot of these kids are doing things like, you know, smoking crystal, you know, what's it called, meth, you know, they're shooting heroin, they're doing things like that. And all that started
Molly's, dirty Sprites.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so, you know, man, I can go on and on with the things that young people are doing. I think a lot of what you said, though, pill popping is becoming more popular and accessible today. It's
fashionable, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, and I agree with you. And that's really a problem and a shame. We have another caller. Caller, you on the air. Good evening, caller.
Yes, and good evening to you.
Good evening, sir.
To your guest is a question I'd like to ask you. A couple of years ago, someone was trying to get me to invest in the drones. They are doing a lot of documentaries. They are doing a lot of movies, the feature movies where they're using the drones, where they are bringing things in and closer and things of that nature. So listen, do you think that's a good investment to get in that? Do you think it's going to be the next big thing in artistry of the movies. Let me get up there. Thanks for taking the call, and give me your response.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, with drones, absolutely. Drones are if we're talking about from a movie perspective, drones are used heavily in film because of the fact that you can get those nice overhead shots. And a lot of times when you look at a movie and you see that the camera's looking down on the city and following a car and things like that, with drones it enables you to do that a lot faster, and it looks phenomenal to be able to do that. So with that respect, it would be a pretty good business to invest in, but they're also using drones to drop off drugs and things of that nature. So, and that's just basically the way that the world is becoming more automated.
Yeah.
So
I know that there was some so I know that they passed drone laws in several states, and the federal government are regulating them. But I thought that there was some kind of rule over what they could drop and deliver. Not to say who knows what they're dropping off in drones, man. I mean, so you hear, and thank you for your call. I mean, you hear stories about drugs being ported into the communities. Sure. They're driven into the community. They're smuggled in through body parts and all these other things. But to your point, I think to his point, I should say, I often wonder, now that they're delivering packages.
That's right. You can't get away from that.
Right. The modern technology is evolving.
That's right.
Okay, so now that they're delivering packages, who screen the packages and know what, you know what I'm saying? So to his point about them, I mean, I guess.
Buy that drone. It's a good investment.
Okay.
So invest in it.
You heard it from someone who does films. I don't know. I can't use drones to talk. I mean, go or walk up and down the street. But hey, it is what it is.
Right.
Hey, listen, we got another caller. Caller, you on the air. Caller, you on the air.
Yes, my name is Teresa, and I'm calling from Gary. And I would like to thank Mr. Lewis for bringing this project for our inner cities. But I did see his film, Gene, and it deals with a lot of emotional and strong baggage when it comes to depression and drugs and things like that. And I wanted to know, where did he get his inspiration for such a project like that?
Oh, thank you for your call. Go ahead, brother.
Well, sure. So Gene is basically a collective of a lot of different people that we have all seen in the neighborhood, or in the hood, I should say.
Okay.
And it basically, the story, and it is quite emotional because it starts off happy, and then after all of these things that she tries, it starts off with cigarettes, she gets addicted, then it starts, goes to alcohol, she gets addicted, then finally it goes to pills. So at the end, she's addicted to the three things, and then she ends up passing away. That's a common tale. If you grew up in the inner city, not just the inner city, but every place. It's not even a black thing. It's a people thing. So the emotion is just natural emotion of what will come with being addicted to those type of things. So it isn't really one person that really inspired that. It's just what we see every day. On television, on the radio, listening to songs, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I would add that some years ago, I know a lot of people use this term "by Felicia," but they really don't know where Felicia came from. The other Friday, there was a character, Felicia, in there who was addicted to I think everything.
Exactly.
Whatever it was, she was
Jane is Felicia.
Jane is Felicia.
That's
yeah,
right.
and so and I hear people use the term and not knowing where that came from, but it came from that movie, the movies.
Yeah,
So just as a compliment to you. Things just kind of take off from, as they say, art imitates life.
Right.
And so, listen, I think that sometimes we are visual people.
Sure.
I know young people are visual people, and we're kind of trendy.
That's
so
right.
what picks up in trends, and so like Felicia took off, people use it, but not knowing the character, who Felicia really was.
Where it originated from.
Right? It originated from. So I think those things are kind of important. So as it relates, so where are you now? Are you still living in Gary, or?
No, so I'm in Country Club Hills now.
Okay, all right.
So I grew up, born and raised in Gary. Went to Purdue, Boiler Up, big Boilermaker fan.
Yeah.
Lived in Chicago for a little bit.
Okay.
So lived in Chicago on the south side, 46 and Ellis.
All right.
Been out in Country Club
Kenwood
Hills.
area.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. North Kenwood.
All right.
And now I'm in Country Club Hills. Been there for about 11 years.
Okay. And so what do you see Are you working on more youth films, or what are some of the things that you're working on right now, or you look towards working on?
Okay, so I just finished a short film called The Final Interrogation.
Okay.
So The Final Interrogation is, it's kind of the opposite spectrum of Gene, but it still covers, issues that happen in the inner city. Like, for example, maybe a family member or someone of bad influence kind of pulls you into their world, and then, obviously that the demise is prevalent in that one as well. But that's basically making this run through the film festivals. We've already gotten into 5 film festivals.
So I was listening to the radio on a radio station that I won't give the numbers here for the sake of this is a non-for-profit television program, but I was listening to a radio program, and it seems to be, now that you mention this, a very heavy African-American film, I guess, producers, screenwriters type of environment or community in Gary, Indiana. So I heard a woman who says she's from Gary. Now that you talk about this, it's all coming full circle for me, that they put on these short films, small films, and they help small writers go into the communities promoting their work. So are you a part of that network?
Yes. So and not just that, there is on February the 16th and the 17th, there is a 7th annual Gary Film Festival that my film will be a part of.
Okay.
So that's basically not just to highlight filmmakers from Gary, but filmmakers all around the world pretty much submit to that. So.
All right, and we will have to look into that and get those dates. But here, if you want to get some more information about GBC, Grand Boulevard Coalition, you can reach us at 312-588-3868. 312-588-3868, or you can email us at gbcchicago@gmail.com. gbcchicago@gmail.com. All right, we're going into our final stretch here. My guest, again, you're watching the Grand Boulevard Coalition program. I'm your host, Bomani Obadella. The Grand Boulevard Coalition is made up of several prevention organizations in the Grand Boulevard community, which is on the south side. It stretches from 51st Street on the south, north to 35th Street, east from the lake, west to the Dan Rhine. And our guest is a very dynamic young man, Mr. Kenny Lewis, who is a film producer, has done some photography work and some other things in the community, and a bright and a rising star. You remember you've seen him here first, people tend to take off. I know several people who've, Dr. Umar Johnson got his first start here. And well, we wasn't here, we were on Green Street, but at CAN TV before he took off and doing lectures and opening schools and doing all these other things. I'm just talking about the power of CAN TV and its viewership. So I'll digress from that. We'll get back to Mr. Lewis. So, Mr. Lewis, tell me this. As it relates to young people, are you doing any work in the schools, and then tell me about some of your photography work that you've done?
Oh, sure. So, so the name of my company is Urban Lens. So it is basically the way that I see the world, art, nature, people, through an urban eye.
Okay.
Growing up in the inner city, I understand that there's beauty in the inner city. So that's kind of my style of photography.
Okay.
If you will. And style of filmmaking as well. So.
All right, and so have you done any work with young people or young youth groups at all?
I haven't too much as of yet, and I actually need to do more. So that's something that I'm looking to do and really start up in 2018. So.
Okay, all right. And so coming up, do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes. So I have older brother, I have 2 older sisters, and I'm the youngest of them.
All right. You have any children?
Yes, 2 girls.
2 girls?
10 and 15.
What grades are they in?
They're in the 4th grade and the 9th grade. So I got a freshman, I got a teenager,
Wow. Hey man, I think so now that I met your lovely wife earlier. I tell you, man, I'm a father of teenagers, man, and being a parent today in this type of environment with I'd like to call it the smartphone zone. They have access to things that we certainly didn't have access to, man. And,
it's a gift and a curse, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll let you go ahead.
No, I just said, man.
It is.
It is some days, man, and I don't have much hair, as you see, and I'm standing there.
Could you imagine having Google in school? You know, didn't have to go to the library, didn't have to look up anything. I just couldn't imagine that. But
and you say a word and something else comes out.
That's right.
Well, we've been given the signal to start wrapping up, so I am going to give you some opportunities to give some closing remarks, Mr. Lewis, before we go.
Sure. Well, thanks a lot for having me. I want you guys to definitely come out to the Gary Film Festival on February 16th and the 17th. They're screening my film, Final Interrogation. I just want to do a huge shout out to the cast of Final Interrogation and Gene, which we've been talking about.
Yes.
McGee, she did a fantastic job in Gene, and you know, be on the lookout. So hopefully another film will be coming to you this year in the theater.
Well, I hope you do more films focused on prevention.
Sure.
That is certainly great. And listen, guys, you've been watching the Grand Boulevard Coalition. We want to thank CAN TV for giving us this wonderful opportunity. Again, Grand Boulevard Coalition is located in the Grand Boulevard community at 10 West 35th Street. We didn't have an address on there. 10 West 35th Street on the 9th floor. We're inside the IIT Towers. Our number, if you want to reach us, at 312-588-3868. 312-588-3868. Again, thank you so much for watching. This has been a great show. Thanks to our guest, Mr. Ken Lewis. Until next week, God bless.